Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 155. Without any delay, start explanation. Huh? I don't, Tang Wulin tried to wave her off quickly. From his childhood till now, he never once had the opportunity to learn how to dance. It's not that hard. Why don't I teach you? With a graceful movement, Lin Yuhan reached out her hand and pulled a stunned Tang Wulin by his arm, directing him toward the dance floor. Whoa! Tang Wulin's being pulled away. It's that girl from the Star Luo Empire, Xu Xiaoyan exclaimed softly as she nudged Guyu beside her. Guyu turned to look. As soon as she saw Tang Wulin being pulled toward the dance floor by Lin Yuhan, she instantly furrowed her brows. What do we do? Sister Yu? Xu Xiaoyan said softly. Guyu smiled dryly. Nothing. Xu Xiaoyan said with a smile, our captain is really popular. You must keep both eyes on him. Guyu replied, if one's man is seduced by another woman, it only means that one's own charm is insufficient. Yi Xinglan lifted her head to look at Guyu and gave her a thumbs up. Yuan and Yehui could not help but break into laughter. I'm the only one who's unswerving in my loyalty. No girl can seduce me, no matter how pretty she is. Xie had turned up out of nowhere. He stood beside Yuan and Yehui and spoke as if he was an upright person. Get away from me, Yuan and Yehui said with a soft voice. The other three girls tried to suppress their smiles. Lin Yuhan was a blacksmith through and through. The strength of her hand was extraordinary. She was pulling Tang Wulin toward the dance floor, so it would be unbecoming of him to forcefully break free of her grip. To be honest, his impression of Lin Yuhan was not bad. It was difficult enough for a man to learn how to forge, let alone a girl. Blacksmithing was the hardest to master among all the other sub-professions, and also the most difficult to produce results. For Lin Yuhan to become a rank 5 blacksmith at around his own age, she must have put in a tremendous amount of effort. Tang Wulin knew all too well just how much hardship he had to endure to achieve his current level. Even if there was a gap between Lin Yuhan's abilities and his, it would not be much of a difference. For a girl to be able to reach this point, a determination must have been unimaginable. They were both of the same profession, so there was a natural closeness between them. That was why he followed Lin Yuhan to the dance floor without much resistance. Lin Yuhan spun around to face him. She did not loosen her grip on his hand. Instead, she raised it. Her other hand rested on his shoulder. You just have to follow my lead. I'll guide you. Place your hand on my waist, Lin Yuhan said softly. Huh? Tang Wulin was slightly shocked. Other than Guyu and Enea, he had never been so intimately close to another girl. He instinctively raised his hand and rested it lightly on Lin Yuhan's midsection. Her waist was lithe and slender. Tang Wulin was a youthful teenager after all, and he never had much contact with girls. His heart started racing, and his cheeks flushed a faint red. As she looked at his obviously awkward expression, Lin Yuhan could not help but break into a laugh. Here I go, she said as she slid on her left foot and glided with Tang Wulin onto the dance floor. A force came naturally from her hands as they guided Tang Wulin's body. Although Tang Wulin did not know how to dance, he had learned the Ghost Shadow perplexing track before. His reflexes were certainly fast enough. He always lagged slightly behind in his steps, yet he somehow managed to keep up with Lin Yuhan. He appeared rusty, but he could still dance. Lin Yuhan started moving quicker now, and Tang Wulin had already become more familiar with the steps. As he followed the music, he gradually got the hang of it. The boy was handsome and the girl was beautiful. Although their poise was not all that great, they still easily attracted the crowd's attention. Lin Yuhan led him in the dance as she snickered. You're heavy. You don't look fat, but you're not light either. Indeed, Tang Wulin was much heavier than he looked. The density of his bones and muscles was far greater than those of an ordinary person. That was why his actual weight was quite a shock. Tang Wulin said with a bit of awkwardness, I really don't know how to dance. You're quite good at this. Lin Yuhan said, when we reach the Star Luo Empire, how about I invite you as a guest to our Empire Forging Academy? Tang Wulin said with a faint smile, that would be great. You guys must have some unique views on forging. It'll be a great opportunity for me to learn a thing or two. Lin Yuhan rolled her eyes. You? Learn? You're powerful enough as it is. In our academy, I'm already the most outstanding genius, but I was still no match for you. How on the continent did you cultivate that strength of yours? Since when have you been learning to forge? Tang Wulin replied, ever since I was 6 years old. I started off learning the basics under my teacher. I was born with greater strength than other people, so maybe that's where I have a slight advantage. I've been forging ever since. Lin Yuhan grunted. Then you haven't been spending as much time as I have. I've been holding the forging hammer since I was 3 years old. My father's a blacksmith. Not long after I was born, the hammer was my only toy. Then, as I grew up, my toys were larger and larger hammers. You can say that forging is in my blood. I never thought it would be possible to find another person who loves forging as much as I do, but I never expected to meet a beast like you. Tang Wulin looked at her in astonishment. Lin Yuhan had said it lightly, but for a little girl like her to grow up knowing only the forging hammer, she must have gone through unbridled hardship. Is your father strict? Tang Wulin asked. Lin Yuhan pouted her lips a little, then she nodded her head slightly. Teacher could not bear to see how stern my father was with me in the past. That's why he brought me with him to participate in this exchange. You may not know this, but this year has been the most relaxing for me. The Doluo continent is a fun place. I'm even slightly reluctant to go back, especially when I think about having to face father. Tang Wulin sighed softly. At least you can still see your father. My father was kidnapped by some unknown criminal many years ago. I can't see him even if I wanted to. I think that your father places high demands on you because he wants you to inherit his legacy. You've endured it for so many years now, so please keep up the good work. I think he won't be as strict with you after you've become a divine craftsman. There was a hint of sorrow in the eyes of Lin Yuhan as she looked at Tang Wulin. She could not help but feel amazed. It seemed that she was lucky compared to his situation. You really know how to ease someone's anxieties. I'm sorry for making you sad, she replied softly. Tang Wulin shook his head. It's all right, I'll work hard as well. I will find father and mother. They will return to me. Then, we can have a family reunion. Yes, you can do it. Just then, the song had reached its end, and the people on the floor stopped dancing. Although it was only one song, his powerful body coordination and reflexes had got Tang Wulin somewhat used to dancing. They stopped dancing as well. Tang Wulin hastily removed his hand that had been wrapped around Lin Yuhan's waist. Lin Yuhan smiled faintly. Didn't you find dancing fun? Would you like to go again? Tang Wulin quickly waved his hand. No thanks. I'm nervous. Didn't you notice that I kept staring at the floor just now? My main concern was that I might step on your feet. Lin Yuhan covered her mouth as she laughed softly. She wanted to say something but noticed someone else was standing beside Tang Wulin. Excuse me, she nodded slightly toward Lin Yuhan. Her right arm locked onto Tang Wulin's arm. It was the girl who came in with him. Lin Yuhan's pupils contracted slightly. She managed to smile. You guys have something planned? Guyu smiled dryly. He's my dance partner. I'll be dancing with him for the next song. Tang Wulin looked at her in surprise. Since when had they become dance partners? Then he saw the bitterness behind Guyu's eyes. There seemed to be a domineering look to her as well. Oh, Lin Yuhan replied. She smiled at Tang Wulin, but she did not leave. She just stood there. The next song started to play shortly after. Guyu pulled lightly on Tang Wulin. Come. Oh, okay. Tang Wulin had no choice but to follow her back onto the dance floor. Lin Yuhan pouted. She went to one side, but she secretly balled her fists. The best boys would always have many admirers. She would have to fight for her own happiness. From her childhood up until now, she had spent her days forging. Every day was the same dull routine with the forging hammer. Only when she came to the Doluo continent did she have the chance to truly relax her body and mind. She had a huge improvement in her emotional quotient. Her mind was relaxed, and even her forging had risen to a higher level. If the requirements were not so strict, she, having already exceeded a 4-ring cultivation base, could already be considered a rank 6 blacksmith. She had known since she was a little girl that she was an absolute genius in terms of forging. There was nobody on the Star Luo continent stronger than her. Women were always attracted by strong men. During the last competition with Tang Wulin, although she was somewhat dissatisfied, in hindsight, she had no choice but to admit that Tang Wulin's forging ability was better than hers. A rival. She had never thought that there would be someone amongst her peers that could exceed her own forging level. From that day onward, Tang Wulin's handsome face would frequently appear in her mind. When they met again this time, she found it hard to take her eyes off of him. She even threw her restraint as a girl to the wind and invited him to dance. When Tang Wulin had appeared at the entrance with Guyu, she spotted him immediately. He looked so handsome today. He seemed to fulfill all her heart's desires. Nothing could be more natural than liking a person of the opposite gender. Actually, Lin Yuhan herself did not understand much about those sort of things. She just enjoyed being close to Tang Wulin. She was confident enough in her own looks, and she did not think that she was any less pretty than Guyu. Furthermore, she shared the same profession with Tang Wulin. She still had a chance. The next song was noticeably more energetic than the one before, as arranged by Sima Lanxiao. He needed to enliven the mood of the banquet. A vibrant atmosphere was helpful for the exchange program. Guyu pulled Tang Wulin onto the dance floor. Tang Wulin barely had time to react when Guyu stopped in her tracks. She turned around suddenly and glared angrily at Tang Wulin. Guyu, I? The electrifying music started to play right at that moment. Guyu pulled on Tang Wulin's arm and placed his right hand on her waist. At the same time, she raised her left hand. She held Tang Wulin's left hand and raised it high above her head. Shortly after, Guyu's entire body, under the guidance of her raised left hand, started to swivel quickly. As she swayed, her one-piece dress seemed to glitter with a silver glow like a gemstone. Her hemline started to rise. Tang Wulin had wanted to warn her, but he noticed that Guyu had worn shorts underneath her dress. Nobody knew when she had put them on. The Guyu in this moment was no longer calm nor cold. Instead, she was filled with a wildness that was hard to pin down. Tang Wulin felt like something inside him was being prodded. His heart fluttered slightly, and his blood ran hot. Guyu also attracted the attention of everyone around them. Soon after, she unexpectedly stepped on Tang Wulin's thigh with her left foot. She took advantage of the situation by using the momentum to leap up and landed on Tang Wulin's shoulders. Her movements were gracefully extended. It was a beautiful scene. She tiptoed on Tang Wulin's shoulder and started swaying again. With this, everyone's eyes were centered on her. Holding firmly onto Tang Wulin's shoulders, she stood on her hands. Guyu now seemed to have transformed into a serpentine beauty. She slid down in a spiral around Tang Wulin's body, and her waist fell into his grasp once again. She pulled backward and Tang Wulin was naturally leaned forward. Guyu bent backward as far as she could. She supported herself against the floor with her hands and threw her long legs upward around Tang Wulin's neck. Tang Wulin's arms were still on her waist. Guyu's every movement was impeccably synchronized with the music. "Throw me." Guyu's voice sounded in Tang Wulin's ear. Using his upper body strength, Tang Wulin pushed back and supported her slender body. He was immensely powerful. As he swung upward, Guyu's figure swiveled and shot into the air. The banquet hall was at least 30 meters high, but when Guyu was thrown upward by Tang Wulin, she almost touched the ceiling. She continued gyrating in midair as her upper body stretched out in various movements. She dropped downward slightly while swaying, appearing like a silver lotus in full bloom. On the floor, everyone else had stopped dancing for quite some time. Their gaze was fixated on Guyu and Tang Wulin. As she dropped down from above, Tang Wulin raised his right hand and caught her gently by the waist before placing her back on the ground. Guyu pulled on his hand and broke into a waltz around him. Tang Wulin did not move much, his every move was made under Guyu's guidance, but they seemed to be in sync. Tang Wulin's gaze never left Guyu's eyes, but the expression in his own eyes shifted continuously. From the initial shock, it turned to surprise, then to enthusiasm, and finally to ecstasy. Her poise was truly a sight to behold. Guyu had an amazing body. Her legs were especially slender, and her waist was slim. Although she did not possess the bosomy beauty of a mature woman, she was filled with the vigor of youth. Even while doing such a quick-paced dance, she still displayed grace and nobility. She was like a fairy beside him, always at his side and dancing enthusiastically for no one else. When the final note of the music sounded, Guyu swiveled and leaned on Tang Wulin's chest. She raised her head slowly. The hatred and hidden bitterness in her eyes had disappeared. There was only a faint smile on her beautiful face. As she leaned on his chest, she stretched out her hands and placed them lightly on his cheeks. Their eyes locked. Tang Wulin's gaze was scorching hot, but there was only warmth left in hers. Tang Wulin pulled on her lightly. Guyu turned in a circle and stood up straight. She extended her arms and led Tang Wulin as they bowed to the audience. The crowd in the banquet hall burst into applause immediately. In an instant, whistles and claps had brought the atmosphere in the banquet hall to a climax for a moment. With everyone cheering for them, Guyu faced Tang Wulin and adjusted his bow tie and shirt for him. She spoke to him in a volume which only the two of them could hear. Even if you want to learn how to dance, it's enough for me to teach you. If you ever dance with another girl again, what'll you do? Tang Wulin hugged her waist. Guyu raised her head. She did not evade his gaze in the slightest as she said with a smile, I'll break her legs. Guyu pulled on Tang Wulin as they parted the crowd to exit the dance floor. Like a proud peahen, she had pulled him back to where he once was. Wow. Sister you're so amazing. Xu Xiaoyon's pretty face had flushed red out of excitement. She hugged Guyu forcefully. Teach me how to dance. Can you teach me how to dance after this as well? Guyu nodded with a smile. Yuan Yehue's expression was a little peculiar as she looked at Tang Wulin. Guyu did the right thing. Some people just can't be indulged. That's right. Whatever bad habit you let them indulge in, they'll certainly pick it up, Xie chimed in from the side immediately. Tang Wulin raised his eyebrows. Xie, don't you think that dancing is a beautiful thing? If a man has graceful dance moves, he'll attract the attention of the ladies more easily. Xie was stunned. He looked at Yuan and Yehue beside him. He remembered clearly that when they were watching Tang Wulin and Guyu dance so nimbly, Yuan and Yehue had never taken her eyes off them even for a second. There was even a hint of envy in her eyes. What do you mean? Did you want to teach me? You don't seem so well-versed yourself. Tang Wulin said, for something like this, practice makes perfect. How can you know the result if you haven't even given it a try? Besides, you're an agility system battle soul master. I'm sure you'll master it in no time. Come, I'll teach you. Don't you find it weird that two guys are dancing together? Xie was slightly hesitant, but he still came to Tang Wulin's side. If he learned how to dance, would that add points to Yuan and Yehue's impression of him? Tang Wulin hugged his shoulder and pulled Xie toward the dance floor. Xu Xiaoyon looked at Guyu with puzzlement and said, What's the captain up to? Don't tell me that he's really hooked on dancing. Guyu said dryly, No, I think it's because of what I said to him just now. I'll break the legs of anyone he dances with. Xu Xiaoyon was initially stunned, then she broke into laughter. The captain is pure evil. He's too sly. Poor Xie. Yuan and Yehui also laughed hysterically. Somewhat helplessly, she shook her head. In the end, Tang Wulin did not successfully dance with Xie Xie, the reason being that the primary selections of the day were just about to start. On the Doluo continent side, Elder Cai was among the 5 persons of noble character and high prestige. Impressively, Tang Wulin was chosen as a candidate for the Best Dressed Gentleman, the Most Handsome Gentleman, and the Best Dancing Couple categories in the next selection. He was nominated for 3 categories in one go. Of course, his dance moves were not worth mentioning, but he was Guyu's dance partner. What surprised Tang Wulin a little was that Wu Zhongkong, who had been standing in a corner and had never stepped onto the dance floor, was also nominated for the Best Dressed Gentleman and Most Handsome Gentleman categories. He had never thought that he would have the chance to compete against Teacher Wu. For the Best Dressed Lady on Shrek Academy's side, Guyu and Xu Xiaoyan were both nominated in the primary selections. Yu Jingyu, on the other hand, was nominated for 2 awards, the Best Dressed and the Most Handsome Gentleman. Among the 10 prettiest ladies nominated, Guyu, Yi Xinglan, Xu Xiaoyan, and Lin Yuhan were all on the list. Guyu's dance was too breathtaking. It was so breathtaking that she was still the crowd favorite, although she paled slightly in the looks department. Next came the voting session. In the end, Tang Wulin won the Best Dressed Gentleman award along with the Best Dance award with Guyu. The award for Best Dressed Lady went to Guyu while the Prettiest Lady award went to someone they were unfamiliar with. It was a 20-year-old lady from the Star Luo Empire. As for the winner of the Most Handsome Gentleman award, the icily arrogant Prince Charming, Sky Ice and Snow Cold Wu Zhongkong impressively took it home. When Wu Zhongkong went up the stage to receive the award, Tang Wulin could clearly see a hint of awkwardness flash across his eyes. He reckoned that it was the first time Teacher Wu had encountered a situation such as this. If it were not for Elder Cai's presence, he probably would not even go up the stage. The prizes were actually nothing to shout about. They were just a few specialties from the Star Luo Empire. However, throughout these series of events, the relationship between the diplomatic corps from both continents was now noticeably friendlier. "You're quite good at dancing." Lin Yuhan walked up to Guyu. She said with a smile, "Congratulations on winning the award." Guyu replied with a smile, "You're not too bad yourself." The 2 girls locked eyes, and there seemed to be faint sparks shooting between them. "Wulin, do you have time tomorrow? I'd like to ask you a couple of things about forging. There's a forging workshop on the ship. Would you like to come and have a practice session with me?" Lin Yuhan turned toward Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin was about to agree when a sudden shot of pain jolted upward all the way from his waist. He coughed and said, "You know what? I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it tomorrow. I have to cultivate, and I have some other things to attend to. Let's do it another day, okay?" "Another day? Okay. I'm staying in room 521. You can reach me with the ship's communication phone." After they entered the ocean, every other soul communicator tool lost all signal. They could only get in touch via the ship's in-house communication system. "All right." Lin Yuhan walked away, feeling slightly dissatisfied. After she left, Guyu released her grip on the back of Tang Wulin's waist. Tang Wulin looked at her. She raised her head and returned the gaze. "So sour. It's so sour. Is there a spilled vinegar bottle somewhere, one?" Yu Jingyu laughed loudly. He kept laughing as he took the lead and ran away. This banquet was very successful. The diplomatic corps members from the Doluo and Star Luo continent had obviously warmed up to each other. The identities of the diplomatic corps members were very complicated. There were scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants. Of course, there was no lack of exchange of battle strength between them as well. Tang Wulin had heard Wu Zhongkong mention that there were very powerful mecha and battle armor masters from both sides who participated in the current exchange competition. Naturally, they were representing the academy. From their initial contact, Tang Wulin felt that they may not necessarily be stronger than them, although the Royal Star Luo Academy was rather strong considering their gap in age. It was clear that the specifics of the exchange program would not be carried out in the ship. Of course, the possibility that it might be on the ship could not be discounted as well. He went back to his cabin room, took off the clothes Guyu gave him and hung them in the closet in his room. The only scene replaying itself within Tang Wulin's mind was Guyu's elegant, noble, and wild dance moves. He had never thought that Guyu had this side to her. However, he had no choice but to admit that Guyu was different from the rest when she danced earlier. Her moving dance left a deep impression in his heart. He immediately felt much more comfortable after changing into his usual clothes. Tang Wulin opened the door to the balcony and allowed the sea breeze to enter. The refreshing sea breeze enveloped his face and body, making him feel very comfortable. Tang Wulin took a deep breath of the moist air and looked into the sky. The weather was not too good today. There was no light from the moon or the stars while the ocean was a giant, pitch-black patch. He could only hear the faint sounds of waves crashing, but there was an additional tranquility which excited him. As expected, the outside world was very unique. He began feeling grateful for the opportunity given to him to participate in this activity. After encountering the scores of newfangled things, his heartstring, which had always been tense due to cultivation, relaxed. He stepped out onto the balcony and held the handrails with his hands. A purplish light flickered in Tang Wulin's eyes. He worked his purple demon eyes and looked downward. As expected, the enhancing effects of the purple demon eyes toward his eyesight were very effective. With the meager lighting on the ship, he could still see the seawater below. The night dyed the ocean black. One could not find the light here, but it was filled with mystique. The ocean was the most expansive place in the world. It was mentioned during one of their classes in the academy that the ocean covered almost 70% of this planet's surface. Planet. This concept was interesting. He wondered if there were other planets out there in the world beyond the Dolor continent. The new and developing discipline of astronomy had begun expanding slowly. Humans had begun observing the outside world through high-power telescopes. Sadly, although Tang Wulin was very interested in this, he had no opportunity to procure more knowledge on this matter because of his hectic cultivation and academic schedules. Just when he was lost in his thoughts, Tang Wulin suddenly felt the back of his neck tense up. He leaped as if he was treading on clouds. This was bad. A strong sense of danger immediately spread across his body, so he instinctively urged his soul power. However, he noticed a strange energy entering his body, cutting off his connection to his soul power. The bloodline within his body raged as it was forcefully resisting the alien energy, but to no avail. The back of his neck went numb and a vital part was pinched. Soon, his entire body immediately began to ache as it turned limp. Although he was still young, this was not the first time he encountered a dangerous situation. He did not lose his cool when faced with this situation. Instead, he continued mobilizing his blood essence and soul power in an attempt to find a chance to escape. His body leaped, but naturally, he did not know how to fly. After leaping over the handrails, what ensued was a rapid fall. Splash! His body felt ice cold as he fell into the sea. Immediately, Tang Wulin felt his body completely drenched with seawater as the light around him surrendered, giving way to the darkness. That large hand had been pinching his nape forced him down toward the bottom of the sea. Tang Wulin's weight was far heavier than an ordinary person. However, at this moment, a denser body did not bring him any benefit. Instead, it only brought disadvantages as he sank as swift as a rock would in the ocean. Tang Wulin could not breathe, so he could only hold his breath forcefully. He tried desperately to struggle, but he could not break free from that large hand on his nape no matter what he did. His vision had blurred, and he only saw pitch blackness. The soul power and blood essence within his body were suppressed, and he could not breathe. The feeling of being oppressed set in quickly. This was followed by a pressure of being continuously pushed down into the depths of the ocean. Was he about to die? Tang Wulin had no clue as to who would want to hurt him. However, he had no doubts that this person was far more powerful than he was. He was simply far too powerful. He did not even have the strength to retaliate. He could neither shout nor breathe. The immense pressure of the water pushed against his body. Although he was sufficiently strong, The pressure on his body caused him to lose oxygen quickly, considering the fact that he was currently out of air. The powerful feeling of being oppressed made Tang Wulin's lungs feel pain, and it was as if they were about to explode. Under this pressure, his blood essence began to restlessly move about. No, this can't end like this. I want to live. His indomitable determination suddenly arose, and once again, Tang Wulin's inner potential exploded in a time of crisis. A layer of faint golden light appeared on his body, and the blood essence within him suddenly boiled over wildly. The strong waves emanating from him due to his bloodline urged the appearance of the golden dragon body, causing the pressure on his nape to also diminish to a certain extent. The formidable force of the golden dragon king bloodline manifested itself. With his boiling blood essence, the feeling of being oppressed decreased ever so slightly, and as his scales appeared, Tang Wulin's elbows shot backward in full force. His blood essence completed its reversal in an instant. Golden dragon shocks the heavens erupted from his elbows, and he unleashed domineering golden dragon body, causing the scales all over his body to suddenly shine brightly. He needed a chance to break free. The ship above him had not left, but as long as he broke the surface, there was a possibility that he would be noticed by others. On the large ocean-going ship, there were plenty of experts among the diplomatic corps from both parties, and they were as numerous as trees in the forest. He would be safe as long as he could get them to notice him. Bang! A muffled sound came from beneath the sea's surface. His elbows seemed to have hit an iron board. If Tang Wulin's body was not firm and tenacious enough, his bones would have been shattered by this impact. The pressure from the large hand on his nape increased tremendously, but at this moment, domineering golden dragon body's effect erupted. The scales on his body flickered quickly, and Tang Wulin suddenly shot forward. With the recoil from his elbows earlier, he forcefully broke himself free from the grip of the large hand. He was still underwater, but he abruptly turned around and brazenly swiped with his right hand. 5 dark golden shadows in the shape of a claw slashed out flagrantly in a flicker of madness. In the face of a life-and-death crisis, Tang Wulin's potential completely erupted. The golden dragon Dreadclaw enhanced by his domineering golden dragon body could definitely be regarded as his masterpiece. As he clawed, the seawater was torn apart, allowing Tang Wulin to see the person who had been controlling him as he turned around to face him. Before him was a person with indistinguishable features with a dark golden body. He was made of a pure, golden darkness. Tang Wulin was quite confident in the golden dragon Dreadclaw. It was a combination of a soul bone and his own bloodline. It was his most powerful attack move yet. As he launched this attack, he reversed his bloodline to connect with his soul power and almost lashed out with a combination of a third of his strength and the energy absorbed by the domineering golden dragon body. Tang Wulin was confident that even an expert at the rank of 5-ring Soul King would have a hard time blocking that attack of his. However, he was flabbergasted in the next instant. The person before him showed no intention of evading the golden dragon Dreadclaw. The 5 dark golden blades of light slashed mercilessly toward the person's body and disintegrated. As the remnants of the attack dissipated, the dark golden body showed no signs of change. It did not wait for Tang Wulin to escape upward. Tang Wulin's vision blurred as a large hand choked his throat. His body continued to sink downward, and it seems as if this person had forcibly suppressed all the blood essence Tang Wulin had roused up earlier. He's fine. He's actually fine. He was directly hit by Golden Dragon Dreadclaw, but it had no effect on him. From his body to his soul, Tang Wulin was ice cold all over. He knew that he had hit an iron board one right now. This person was not someone he could fight against. His strength far surpassed his own. The pressure from the seawater grew in magnitude. The explosion of energy earlier also resulted in the rapid deterioration of Tang Wulin's strength, and the immense pressure made him feel numb in certain parts of his body. The feeling of being oppressed even made his brain fall into a light trance. The dragon scales on his skin were still present, and they still glowed with a faint golden light. However, although the bloodline in his body was trying desperately to break through, the enemy was far too powerful. The suppression was so great that Tang Wulin had no way of breaking out of it. I'm done for. A bitter smile appeared on the edge of Tang Wulin's lips. He had never thought that he would die such an obscure death in the midst of the ocean. Perhaps, he would soon turn into food for an soul beast and turn into nutrients for the ocean. He saw nothing but a pitch black and could not even see the dark golden color of the enemy's body anymore. Tang Wulin began to relax his limbs, although his hallucinations were getting worse. He seemed to be able to see a pitch-black tunnel, and at the end of it, there seemed to be someone calling out to him. At this moment, the large hand that was choking him suddenly loosened its grip. The instant the grip was loosened, the bloodline within Tang Wulin suddenly rushed forward. His bloodline began to revolve, making his hallucinations disappear as he partly regained consciousness. He could vaguely make out a figure traveling upward, whereas his body was still sinking. Did he think I was dead? Tang Wulin's body was currently in an acute state of anoxia. However, the instinct for survival instantly cleared his mind. If his opponent truly thought that he had died, then the opportunity to live had finally arrived. He bit the tip of his tongue to wake himself up with the intense pain. He did not attempt to float himself immediately, but managed to flail his arms about to prevent his body from sinking down even further. He had to wait for that peculiar enemy to get farther away from him. Otherwise, his death would be all but certain if his attempt to escape was discovered by his opponent. He waited for some time, but the pain in his body made him feel like he was going to explode, causing him to hallucinate once more. Tang Wulin dared not wait any longer. He bit the tip of his tongue again and managed to keep himself awake with the immense pain. If it were another ordinary person, the person would have long been dead under such immense water pressure and prolonged state of anoxia. However, he had the Golden Dragon King bloodline. His life force too was extremely tenacious. In addition to that, his potential had been completely unleashed in the face of a life-and-death crisis. He flailed his arms about and managed to utilize what little soul power he had left in his body to swim upward. Tang Wulin grew up in a seaside city, so swimming came naturally to him, especially since the ocean was significantly more buoyant. As he controlled his soul power to reduce his weight, his body began to float up rapidly. The water pressure began to kick in, but the lack of oxygen still caused him to hallucinate. Tang Wulin gritted his teeth. His life or death hung upon this single action. He had to endure this no matter what. The ocean was pitch black. He could neither see the end of it nor could he see the surface. He could only squeeze what strength he had left in his body with his indomitable willpower. The speed at which his blood essence revolved began to slow down. His limbs were as heavy as if they were filled with lead, but he still managed to flail his arms about as he brought his weight down to slowly float upward. The water pressure grew weaker, but Tang Wulin's movements were also beginning to slow down. Even he was unsure how far he was from the ocean's surface. Finally, his body could not take it anymore. He had no energy left to move his limbs. The intense lack of oxygen made it impossible, unable to control his body. His dense body was adversely affected by his weight, and he began sinking again. No! Tang Wulin screamed in his heart. Then, he unexpectedly felt a sudden surge of consciousness. At this moment, he could feel another surge of strength rising within him. He flailed his arms that were covered in golden scales about with all his might, and his body suddenly leaped upward. The 18 Golden Dragon King seals within his body were compressed at the same time, and it felt as if they were squeezing out the strength from his body's innermost core. The golden light on his body was faint, but unexpectedly, the feeling of oppression in his chest lessened somewhat. Tang Wulin waved his arms with all his might and kicked down with his feet. Whether it was the sudden surge of consciousness before his death or some other thing, he knew that this was his final ounce of strength. If he could not break the sea's surface with this, it would be the end for him. Eventually, the stirred-up strength was still gradually exhausted. It was becoming more and more difficult for him to breathe. I'm done for. Am I really done for? No. He howled in his heart. He forcibly squeezed out another ounce of strength and increased the speed at which he was floating upward. Finally. Pew! His head broke the water's surface. A wave hit him and made Tang Wulin's torso fall backward. He abruptly opened his mouth as wide as he could as a mouthful of air immediately gushed into his lungs through his mouth and immediately got transported to every part of his body. He broke into a gasping fit as his body seemed to be breathing in the air greedily. Intense pain traveled along his limbs and bones. even from his inner organs. He had floated up too quickly from a depth of hundreds of meters. The change in the water pressure had brought along its symptoms, which was now racking his body, and the transition from an oxygen-deprived state to an environment full of air had left him feeling as if he was being torn apart. He managed to paddle with his arms to stay afloat as he continued greedily breathing in big mouthfuls of air. The blood essence within his body finally resumed its revolutions. He had never felt so close to death. As Tang Wulin floated on the sea surface, his entire body seemed to have gone weak and limp. There was intense pain all over his body. It felt as if he was being peeled open and was being ground up. The feeling was so painful that he groaned out loud. However, he was smiling. Yes, he was smiling. Right now, pain gave him a sense of pleasure. If he felt pain, at least it meant that he was still alive. Finally, the powerful self-regulatory ability of his body made the revolving of his blood essence increasingly stable. The pain in his body also gradually subsided with the nourishment of his blood essence. At this moment, there was only one thought in Tang Wulin's mind. After eating so much food over the years, at least they were not eaten in vain. At this critical moment, it was still his vigorous blood essence that saved his life. Although he was well aware that the big ocean-going ship was already far away, his crisis was far from over. Amidst this vast, boundless ocean, his death would be all but certain if he could not find another boat. However, at the very least, he had survived. He waved his arms and managed to stay afloat as he controlled his body. Tang Wulin's face was plastered with a bitter smile. The two large ocean-going ships were already gone. Even if he could see them, he probably could not catch up to the ships at the current state his body was in. To say the least, it would be impossible. So, he would end up dying in the ocean anyway. His dense body required him to constantly fight against his weight to prevent himself from sinking. However, this would also naturally exhaust what little was left of his stamina. He suddenly thought of a phrase, dragging out one's feeble existence. At this very moment, his pupils suddenly contracted. He saw a dark golden flash. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.